Hi, I'm attachment specialist Adam Lane Smith, and today I want to talk to you about the scheduled murder of men's entertainment. Now, men's entertainment has taken a hard nosedive in recent years. Male characters are being crapped on left and right. And I want to talk to you about that because a lot of people don't quite realize it. They can't quite put their finger on what's wrong. I'm going to start by talking to you about a video game. The latest God of War video game assassinated one of the strongest male characters in modern storytelling. Now, I've been a long-time fan of the franchise. It's pure escapist entertainment. You load up the game, you slaughter your way through countless men and monsters, you bang a few goddesses, and you generally stomp the earth into a more pleasing shape for your badass self. The hero, sort of hero, Kratos confronts enormous titans, he grunts like a gorilla, and he impales them on the nearest sharp stake. Now, women everywhere swoon the moment he walks into the room, and they hurl themselves at his feet with crazed abandon. When he's done with them, it's back to wading through an ocean of blood. Now, there's a lot of scenes that pop up, romance scenes, and the choices are very binary. Just yes or no? Isn't there an option to make Kratos feel guilty? Most people would ask that. Now, I enjoy all this crazed bloodlust and male power fantasy, even though I myself am a devout Catholic. I recognize the value behind the male characters and the inspiration behind the story itself. Now, is Kratos a moral character? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Could those games do with maybe a little bit less of some of the extremes? Yeah, probably they could a little bit less. But with God of War 1, 2, and 3, plus a spin-off, that gives us a character who has the guts to live up to his own principles and his own desires, rather than bow to anyone, even, in the story, the gods of ancient Greece, whom he systematically disembowels and tosses aside. Kratos eventually slaughters his own abusive father, Zeus, and while I don't personally condone patricide, enjoying a story where another man fully lives out his principles, no matter where that journey takes him, inspires young men to live out their own principles. Stories like God of War 1, 2, and 3 and the spin-off encourage young men not to bow to powers that be, and that they should question anyone who forces them to violate their principles, their dignity, and their honor. That's really what those stories are about. This is the value of storytelling. It's the reason Beowulf kills both Grendel and Grendel's mother. It's the reason for all our stories being handed down to us, because they inspire us, because men need inspiration. Now, are God of War fans going out and murdering their own fathers? Well, hardly. If a young man plays God of War and then has casual sex with an actual goddess before slaughtering a legendary beast, you let me know. But when that inspired young man may do, what he might do is stand up to an abuser. He might stand up to someone that he's tolerated out of fear. He may punch a bully in the mouth while protecting another child. They may speak a painful truth instead of cowering in silence. The point of male power fantasy and male escapist entertainment is to inspire the male audience to live fully to their own principles, just like the heroes in the stories, even if their principles are different from the heroes in the stories. The newest God of War game, however, is in the opposite of this. In the newest game, Kratos slinks away from Greece and shame, he finds a wife, he has a son, hides in the forest, and then neglects and abandons them both. When he's around them, he spends all his time agonizing over how ashamed he is of himself and everything he's ever done. He's hiding from the entire world and from himself. The makers even originally intended to show him fat and out of shape, even though he's a god at this point. His now dead wife lays out a plan to try to reunite the verbally abusive deadbeat dad with his own resentful son, but she has to trick both of them into doing it. Somehow, I guess we needed a yelling at my kid on a road trip simulator. The new Kratos is slow. He hardly moves along in the world at all, preferring to power walk everywhere else, while everybody else moves at the speed of light. He complains about being old. He groans his way through the adventure like an old man, despite being a literal god. He displays the power to heal every other kind of infirmity, but he groans and whines endlessly. The lesson at the end is that Kratos acknowledges he's been stupid and selfish, and his wife was a saint, and now he's going to stop being a deadbeat dad by collapsing completely into his son's life. And we end them with a vision of Kratos dying in the future and his son mourning him. Sorry for the spoiler. If this recipe of deadbeat dad grappling with depression sounds familiar, well, you've seen it before in modern times. In the new Disney Star Wars films, Han Solo's son turns to the dark side. Han Solo abandons his principles and his family, and he turns into worse scum than he's ever been. A long-suffering woman has to come along and reunite him with his long-suffering wife. Luke Skywalker stands firm against all the darkness of the Sith and saves his father, but then completely collapses from one bad vision, tries to murder a child, abandons everything that's ever meant something to him, and a long-suffering woman has to come along and reunite him with his long-suffering sister. Mark Hamill famously declared he had to pretend he was playing an entirely new character because this Luke felt nothing like the original character. Now, 007 fans are used to being lectured about how Bond needs to grow up and make way for a new character who's more in touch with modern sensibilities. We've heard that left and right. Now, after the recent Daniel Craig the recent movie ended that franchise, we're all arguing about who the next Bond needs to be for sensibility reasons. And that's really what's at the core here. It's a world telling men to grow up and stop having fantasies. The problem is that the creators of these new stories are a very specific postmodern nihilistic outlook group brought on by weak fathers and absent fathers. Modern creators are supported by Hollywood and big corporations that have crushing attachment problems and broken relationships with their own fathers for a variety of reasons. Their use of their saintly single mothers conditioning them to despise their own fathers. Men grow up worshiping their single mothers, and women grow up seeing all men as worthless children incapable of real love. Harsh truth. Male creators of these stories want to see their own depressed, fat, unloved, regretful selves splashed up on the screen and then get redeemed somehow through the story. They need to see a man just like them, a disappointment to his wife and kids, finally prove he's worth something. Everyone in the story hates them, even the characters' own children, because that's how these male creators feel. Their fathers didn't teach them self-reliance, so the only way they can imagine being redeemed is by a long-suffering woman who represents their own long-suffering single mother. Female creators grow up with their moms telling them that all men are scum. They despise men and demand all men grow up and start pulling their weight, the way they wish their own fathers had. The long-suffering women finally get listened to in these stories, and they put the carefree male characters in their place. And the male characters hug, while the female characters who did all the work stand in the background and roll their eyes. The truth is that men do need to grow up, but they have no idea how. The old rights of manhood have been stripped away. Talking about honor makes people cringe. Everything powerful about men is deemed toxic. Fathers are stripped away from their children by courts and raised by bitter single mothers who raise those sons to hate the parts of themselves they got from their fathers. We're a civilization of frightened boys afraid to grow up because we'll be as weak and stupid as we're told that our fathers were. And we're afraid that growing up means our mothers won't love us anymore. So we stay small, we stay weak, we don't speak up, and we find people to save us. And the state is all too happy to step in and take that power away from men. Men do need to grow up and become men. The state, however, pours money into helping these damaged creators convince us that manhood is evil. Instead, they want us to grow up into useful objects and useful subjects for the state to farm taxes and maintain their power. Now, why do these stories get funded? Because big-time state and corporations want weak men. They don't want men inspired to live out their principles. They want scared men who believe they're too stupid to know right from wrong. So they cower on the floor and they let the state rest its boot on their families' necks. There's tremendous power in emasculating an entire nation, an entire hemisphere of men, and convincing young men that there's no better life out there to be had. That all the heroes of old regretted their principles, and that only listening to socially more passive women will save them. There's tremendous power in convincing every man in America that his crushing depression is the expected normal, and that there's no such thing as a better life. And that's really what these stories represent. That's why they get made. That's why they pick a famous masculine character and neuter him in public. Now, what can men do against such reckless hate? 2 steps. Number 1, we start out by being better men ourselves, who fly in the face of this weakness. We live as examples to others of what men should be by embracing the classical masculine virtues of honor, courage, love, strength, and personal responsibility. Step 2. We support creators telling stories with good male inspiration. Give them money so they can create more and get more publicity. The people on the right, and conservative groups especially, are famous for whining and saying, the right never supports creators, or there are no creators on the right wing. There are no artists. Only the left has those. We don't support them. We just don't support them. Now, you don't have to agree with everything that these creators make. Now, there are definitely some, as an example, some male harem novels where the male character is sleeping with multiple women. And that's not in line with Christian principles, things that I personally view. Even the God of War series, there's some things in there that aren't personally in line with me, that I don't personally say, yeah, no, that's right. There's some pieces in there that are wrong. But you should make sure that the stories you're supporting inspire young men to live out their principles in a more courageous way. So to that end, I have very little problem with male harem novels existing, for some of them at least, because they do showcase the male character protecting women, caring for them, taking personal responsibility, standing up for the downtrodden, embracing the classical masculine virtues. I would much rather support a book that is not a male harem book. It's really hard to find people like this in the mainstream. Any good, strong, virtuous creators, it's hard to find them because they have no publicity. So if you want better content for your sons and grandsons, for yourself even, you need to inspire it and support it. Disney is not going to do it for you. You've got to get to work. Make these things more publicly visible. If you've got some you know about, let me know. I'll support it. I myself write fiction with classical virtues. No sex, no nudity, none of that. Classical virtues. Good classical virtues that young people can read and enjoy. I've got those on Amazon. Many of my creator friends do the same. Publicity is hard. So if you're tired of this, if you want better media for men, and young men especially, if you want better media to encourage young men to build, to inspire, to live to their virtues, to live to their principles, if you want that, you need to help create it and help support it. I'm Adam Lane Smith. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe if this has been helpful, and I'll talk to you again.